Begin the current Daf, Eruvin Daf Nun. Begin on the top line of the Amid, where we continue the discussion of the different opinions of Rabbi Shmuel regarding the halacha of our Mishnah that said Lo Yom Klum. Regarding if someone said Shlisasi Tachta, he said beneath the tree, and he didn't define exactly where beneath the tree, that he doesn't get anything. Appreciate him who is joining us for today's Daf. Some of the things we're going to be discussing in today's Daf are a concept that's called Kol She'ein B'Zeh Chazeh. Whatever, what? No? Kol She'ein B'Zeh Chazeh. Whatever cannot be one after another. What can't be done consecutively can't be done simultaneously either. And that's going to be used as a source for interpretation. Then we're going to have a discussion regarding explaining Rav's halacha of Shlisasi Tachta. His opinion was that if you didn't define exactly where beneath the tree, so then you don't get any chum at all, exactly how large that area of the tree was, to say that it's undefined and therefore you don't get anything. And the Daf concludes with brises that support both Rav and Shmuel, and how do the other ones use the other ones' brises to interpret it. Two terms and concepts we have in today's Daf are Ma'aseh Behema, which is when the person has the new animals of that year, every kind of animal has to be given as Ma'aseh Behema, and the concept that Rav Tana Hu Palak. Although generally an Amar doesn't disagree with the Tana, Rav was at the beginning of the Merod period, at the end of the Tanaik period, and therefore he was able to disagree with a Tana. So we begin the current Daf. Again, just to quickly review, we said in the Mishnah, the first halacha was, if someone says Shlisasi Tachtav, he's 2,000 amas away from a tree, he's Makar Ilon Ageder, and he sees that he knows the tree is 2,000 amas from his house, so he knows he can get how much amas, 4,000 amas. He says, let my Shlisa be, you see that tree over there, let it be Tachtav. So the Mishnah says Lo Maklum, because he didn't specify exact location, he didn't say be carved by the trunk, he says beneath it. Now we don't know where exactly beneath the tree you were talking about. The Gemara brought about Achlik is Rav and Shmuel, so what does it mean Lo Maklum? Rav said, he's actually only permitted to walk 4 amas. It's what's called Layaz Mim Kaimai. He can't move from his place. He doesn't get 2,000 amas here, and he doesn't get over here. Why not? Because over here he didn't plan on being over here. He planned on being over here. Problem is over here he didn't say which Dalet amas it is, so we don't know where it is. So he can't give him a shvisa. He doesn't have any 2,000 amas. Shmuel held no. He says what's called Chamar Gamal. What happens is, you don't know exactly where beneath the tree. Let's say the tree is 30 amas wide. So where's your Dalet amas? We don't know. But from here to the one end of the tree, we'll let you go within 2,000 amas. And from here, from the house, you got to start from this side of the tree. But you'll go stringently, but we'll let you have under the tree. Just it's not exactly clear where that's going to be. So that's how our Gemara begins on the top of Nunim and Aleph. Omer Rav says, "My time of the Rav. What's the reason of Rav? Which is, as Rashi explains, according to Shmuel, we would understand logically why it is that he holds that ultimately you can acquire a shvisa beneath the tree. We just don't know exactly which Dalet amas it is. So it's what's called Yodei al Perchtayna. You're going to have to get the bottom, the worst of each one. So you can lose from the 2,000 going from the tree, either way, going to the house, or from where you are on the way to the tree. But according to Rav, why not kind of shvisa at all? Either way, like we showed in the previous pictures, you should be able to get something. So that the Gemara brings two interpretations from Rav. One is Mishum Deloy Messiah Master, because he didn't define his place. Since he didn't define, he hasn't acquired anything. Like Rabbi Chananel here on the side of Gemara brings, because if you didn't define a spot, you don't have a spot, and therefore you're only going to be left with Dalet amas. So it's not just like we're not sure. You don't have a shvisa because you didn't define where it is. So therefore you don't get anything. Now, those that say a different interpretation. Amar Rabba, again from Rabba, says my time of the Rav. What's the reason of Rav? Because Rav held what's called Kol She'ein B'Zeh Chazeh, whatever cannot be done consecutively, Afil B'Vas Achas Ein, then it's not going to be even simultaneously. In other words, if let's say someone would pick the 4 northernmost amas of the tree, you can't subsequently then change your mind, meaning then you'll pick out the 4 southern that your shvisa should be over here and over here. I mean, you can't you wouldn't be able to get Dalet amas and then take another Dalet amas, because you only get 1 Dalet amas. So even when you could do it at the same time, like here, where you said Shlisasi Tachtav, you're not going to acquire either, because essentially what you're doing is that you're acquiring at the same time, B'vas Achas, your Shvisa to be in the north and the south. You can't do that, just like you wouldn't be able to do it subsequently either. Because what does it mean? Where's your Shvisa? You're telling me that you have to have a Shvisa. So it's based on the concept that since you can only establish one Shabbos residence, So you can't do it simultaneously to get multiple, so therefore none are taking effect. The way the simple understanding, even though there could be some questions regarding the exact comparison, is that, okay, so how is it taking effect right now at the same time too? Where are you, the north or the south? We don't know. So we're going to go stringently. But you wouldn't be able to go the north and the south. You can't have more than one place. So here also, it's bevas achas, and it can't happen at the same time, even though right now I only want out of all these 30 amas, whatever it is, but where is that? So it can't be it wouldn't be able to be it wouldn't be able to be consecutive, so it can't be simultaneous either. So the Gemara says, okay, my bad, what's the difference between these two interpretations? The difference between them is the Amar, where the person says, he says, let me acquire 4 out of the 8 amas. And Rashi says the reason why we're saying out of the 8 amas is because later on the Gemara is going to explain, according to one interpretation, that we're talking about a tree that has a width of 8 amas beneath it. But it does not necessarily be 8, however big the tree is. But I'm saying I want that I can have 4 out of the amas that there are. So that's the difference between these interpretations. According to the first interpretation, says because you didn't define your place. You didn't define your place. We don't know. You don't have a yishvisa because you didn't say where it is. But according to the second interpretation, it says since you cannot do it consecutively, one after another, so you can't do it simultaneously either. But hi, karba amas dami. Here it's like it's dalad amas. The harba amas come because here you said dalad amas, and it would be as if he said. The way Rabbi Chananel says it is that after he says one, he says the other one, the first one, would be the one that you acquire, and it wouldn't be like bevas achas. Bevas achas is like, okay, I want them all, because I don't know where it is. I don't want them all. I said I want dalad amas out of I didn't say where exactly under the tree. The tree is 30 amas long. I said dalad amas out of it I want. So again, if it's like Messiah, you weren't Messiah, but it's not like saying I want all of them, I only want one dalad amas, and therefore that wouldn't be a problem of bezach hazeh, because just like bezach hazeh, if I say I only want one of them, I'm going to have one of them. And the fact that I'm saying another one after that has no significance. Here also, when I want 4 out of the 8 amas, so then according to the second interpretation, that's going to be good. And now the Gemara has a bunch of different questions on this premise of this concept of what Rabbi had said, the second interpretation for Rabbi. Before we learn, Amar Rabbi says, whatever cannot be done subsequently. So even if you're doing it at the same time, it's also not going to be effective. Meaning, even though really I only want 1 out of the 2 or 3 or whatever it is to be, I want it to be right now. There's 1 dalad amas, but I don't know where it is. So I can't. It's the north part, the southern part beneath the tree. So just like I can't do one after the other, I can't do it at the same time. On that principle, the Gemara has many different questions. He brings a brisa. The brisa says, "Hamar b'maisros." If someone increases his tithes, which means to say when you have the produce of the year, you have to take off 1/10 and give it to the lady. Let's say somebody goes and takes off 1/5 or 1/8. So the halacha is actually interesting. Peireisav, the produce that he took off to one side as chulin, are musukan. They're fixed because you took off 1/10 of the produce. But umaisreisav, the maesters that he gave to the Levi are mukul kalin, they're ruined. Why? Because in the meister you have tevel mixed in. Why? What do you mean tevel? If anything, I'm a chassid, I did more than I had to. No. When you give the 8th kav, when you're giving more than the 10th, there's no designation of meister taking effect on that meister. It's not meister. It's untithed produce. Because the Torah tells you explicitly, this is not like when people take meiser on their money that they're making. We're talking about the meiser that you give to the Levi. The Torah tells you it's 1/10. So unlike Truma, let's say, which could be given with a generous eye or a stingy eye or intermediate, Truma doesn't have a specific measurement. You could give more. Meiser, you can't give more. So therefore, when you're giving more than a 10th, so that what you're giving meiser to the Levi is not meiser. It's not fixing any tevel because tevel is only 1/10. Let's say you have 100 bushels, and you're supposed to give the Levi 10, and you give him 12. Those extra 2, those are tevel. What is that? That's not being ma'as or anything, and you can't give more than you need to. So therefore, the chulin's good because you took up 1/10, but the extra 2 meiser you give it to the Levi, that's tevel. It's untithed. You didn't take meiser on that, and therefore you have tevel and meiser muravin, and therefore the meisers are all ruined now. The Levi can't even use any of the meisers. That's the halacha of the price.
Can you give them the whole field?
What?
Can you give them the whole field?
No, you can't. That's the halacha. It's only 1/10. if you would designate it as meiser, maybe, but it's not meiser. It's not fixing anything. Meiser is only that it's tevel, it's untyped produce. Now the question is like this: Amai, why are even the payers okay? Why are you telling me that the chulin that you're keeping the other 90 bushels are going to be okay? Lema, you should say like this: Kol she'ein b'zachar zeh, whatever cannot be one after the other. In other words, let's say he would have taken off 90 and 10.
But isn't meiser after truma?
Yeah.
So there's not really tevel anymore.
No, you have to take off. Tevel includes not just truma,
So
but also
that's
meiser.
So, but it's not tevel anymore.
But no, tevel also
Because if
includes
you
all the
gave
meisers.
truma was given.
But then the meiser wasn't given yet.
No, but it's giving meiser, let's say 11%, when it's supposed to be 10%. So if he gives 10%, it's always a problem of tevel. So it's not.
No, but there's no meiser rishon given on those.
So that's for the Levi to give. So
No. They have to give trumas meiser.
Trumas meiser.
But this had no meiser rishon given. There was no meiser rishon given on them.
So what meiser is he giving?
He's not giving anything. He's giving tevel.
No, but he's giving them
Meiser is only when you're fixing chulin. Meiser is where you're taking off 1/10 from your tevel,
Right.
you're giving to the Levi.
Right.
What you're not giving him meiser over here, because meiser is only 1/10 of the produce. You already gave 1/10. Those extra 2 are not fixing
it's
anything.
not tevel because it was given already.
Tevel is not just truma. Tevel is also meiser rishon.
But even the meiseration, if he gives you
It's not.
11%, then 10 was given, and the 11th is extra.
And there's no extra. That's what we're saying. There's no
So it's
thing
not
of
extra, but it's not a hashash of tevel.
It is, because there's no meiser rishon taken from that tevel. Those extra 1 or 2 you're giving him are not tight. They're not tight. They're tevel, because tithing can only be if it's fixing
You
something.
could say it may be not meiser, but it's not tevel.
It is, because if you don't take off meiser, it's tevel. so this is the Gemara's question like this: If you would have taken off, let's say, out of the 100, you would taken off 10, and then you would go ahead and take off more, and you'd call it meiser on the chulin that was already fixed. Obviously, it wouldn't have a designation of meiser because you already took off what you need to. So therefore, as the Gemara, then this shouldn't even work at the same time. Meaning, right now, when you took off more with the meiser, the shame of meiser, the title of meiser, shouldn't even take effect for those that it is fit to take off meiser. Just like you say for the shvisa of the case we just mentioned before, that when you have a tree that's 30 amos beneath it, you don't say that 4 amos out of the 8 take effect if you didn't say explicitly 4. So here also, since it's not bezach hazeh, you wouldn't be able to take off meiser, give the Levi a 10th, and then after you already took a 10th, give him more because you already did it, so you can't do it bezach hazeh. Then bevas achas erosha shouldn't work. The chulin shouldn't be fixed because it's happening at the same time too. You don't just say, oh, okay, we'll pick on what's good and what's not. Why is it just the meiser that's mekukalim? The chulin should also be mekukal because it's not fixing it, because none of it should be called meiser. Just like it wouldn't be bezeh hazeh, it shouldn't even be bevas achas either. Says the Gemara, no. Shani meiser is different. The reason why the payers are at least masokan, that the chulin is proper produce, because the isa lechatzoy, meiser could be done in halves, meaning every single granule could be that it could have a designation of meiser proportionate to the meiser that you're separating. So, for example, let's say you separated 1/5 instead of 1/10, which was double the amount, more than you're allowed to, not allowed to even, because it's not going to be considered as meiser. Essentially, every grain was halfway sanctified. So therefore, it is exactly 1/10. Because what you're giving to the Levi, again, the Levi stuff are going to be ruined, but what you're giving to the Levi is going to be appropriate exactly 1/10. So it's not a problem of giving more, because you would say it shouldn't take effect, but it's not true. You're given exactly that proportion. The chulin has exactly that amount that you're giving to the Levi, 1/10. Why? You didn't give him 1/5, but we look at every granule as halfway sanctified. So each thing that you're giving him at this moment is exactly the 1/10. So in contrast, let's say by the case of shvisa, you can't say that every place beneath the tree is considered halfway your shvisa, because you need to have 4 amas consecutive. You need to have in one spot daled amas. But by the meiser, that there you could say that every single part, let's say half of it, everything you're giving him would be in half, so then it would be exactly a tenth. So it actually, b'vas achas, it could work, because you're giving him exactly a tenth. But I didn't, I gave him an eighth, I gave him a fifth. Yeah, but each piece then is going to be proportionately to how much ma'aseh it needed to have. So since it's lachatzayin, as the Gemara explains, because if you would tell him every kernel of wheat that I'm giving you for ma'aseh, I want half of it to be sanctified, kitcha would be sanctified. And this guy that separated double the amount that he had to, and they called it meiser, it's as if he was sanctified every piece for its half. And that's what I'm giving him. So again, he has tevel in those other halves of the pieces. But by me, I fixed my chulin because I gave him exactly a tenth. So it's not a problem because they gave him exactly a tenth in every half, or 3/4, or whatever it is, of the ratio of what I need for a tenth. So the Gemara says, okay, fine. Now we have question number 2. Very ma'aseh behema. You have the tithing of the animals. The less lechatzon, you can't give the same answer you gave before that. Oh, every half of the animal, because if you would say half the animal is chul and half the animal is ma'aseh, you haven't said anything for it to be halfway sanctified, because the halacha of ma'aseh behema it says in the pasuk, the Torah tells you that the way you take ma'aseh behema is you put the animals in the corral, in the pen, and you have them come out one at a time. So every 10th animal is going to be sanctified. And as the Bach adds on the words, others Rashi have the words, and also there's no such halacha of one after another, because if you call the 10th one number 10 and you call the 11th one number 10, the 11th one's not going to be sanctified. Now, however, when you call both of them at the same time number 10, we do say that one of them is going to be sanctified. Because Rabbi said, let's say 2 animals come out at the same time, that they squeeze, one animal squeeze himself out, 2 animals come out at the same time. For current Asiri, he calls both those animals number 10. So the halach is Asiri v'achat asam Eruvin zebezeh. You have 10 and 11 that are mixed in one with the other, which one of them is going to be meiser. The other one, the 11th one, is going to be that he called Asiri, that they're both going to be sanctified. Now, if a person would know that, let's say, he made a mistake and he called number 10 number 9, and he called the 11th one number 10. The halacha is that the 10th one's meiser, and the 11th one is brought as shlamim. Which Rashi says, what's the difference between shlamim and meiser? They're both karbanas. No, shlamim needs smicha, you have to lean on the animal, nesachim, they're doing tnufa, the elevation of the chaz and the shaykh. It's redeemed in its blemishes, it's tamura sacrifice, in contrast by meiser. Now that you call them both at the same time, number 10, and you don't know which one is the number 10, and which one is 11 that's just being called as number 10. So you have to treat them both stringently as the halachas of the shlamim, as the meiser, and as the shlamim. So therefore you do tnufas chaz b'shayk and smichim, and you bring the sachim and you bring it all tonight, and you say if it's a shlamim, it should be for this one, and if not, it should be on the other one. But the question is like this. Obviously we see from the fact that there's going to be a designation of meiser on one of them. So obviously that even though the 11th one is not sanctified, if you call the 10th one number 10, which is really number 10, and you call the 11th one number 10, even so when you do it at the same time, we say one of them is going to be sanctified. But the question is, but why? Why are you going to tell me one of them sanctified? If you do bezeh hazeh, it wouldn't work. If you do 10, and then after 10 you call 11 number 10, it's not going to become sanctified. So then why b'vas achas? Why, if they both come out at the same time, are you going to say one of them is going to be, you should say your concept, if it's not bezeh hazeh, it shouldn't be b'vas achas either. If you're doing it at the same time, you shouldn't have one of them being sanctified just as if it wouldn't work one after the other. And that says the Gemara, Shani ma'aseh behema. The halacha of ma'aseh behema is different, because the isa bezeh hazeh b'tois. What happens is that, for example, let's say you made a mistake, and when the 10th one came out, you lost count, you called it number 9. Then when the 11th one came out, you called it number 10. So then the 11th one becomes sanctified because you called it meiser, and it's going to be sacrificed as a shlamim. So therefore, it actually does have halacha bezeh hazeh, that it would work when it's a situation of error. It's not like the Mishnah Masechet B'chayros. It says, Karla Cheshi Asiri, let's say you call the 9th one number 10. Oh, and then you chaptzach, wait a second, that wasn't number 10, that was really number 9. So you go, Asiri Teshi, you call number 10, number 9. And then he's like, wait a second, I called 10, 9. So La'achadas Asiri, you call number 11, you call it number 10. The halacha is Shlashtan B'Kudashin, all 3 of them are sanctified. Now, the last parak in B'chayros, the Gemara learns it out from Sukkim, why it is like that. But one thing is, since that's the case, that we see that it will have a bezeh hazeh when it's a case of tois, So when you call it at the same time, the 11th one will not hold back the 10th one from taking effect to being a bona fide Maisa Behema, because the 11th one itself, sometimes it could have, by being called the number 10, to have the sanctity of a carbon. Where, for example, like we said, if you call the 10th one before number 9, and then you call the 11th one number 10, then it's going to have a sanctity of related to that of Maisa Behema. And therefore, even now in this situation, when it's Bevas Achas, it will also take effect because it does have a Bezach as an element. But now the Gemara asks a third question. Bari Taida. But you have the breads that are brought with a carbon Taida. 40 breads, like the Gemara says, Ibnachas of Ein Zayim and Aleph. The lesser, the Tais, where you can't give the two answers you just gave for the previous ones of Meiser and the Maisa Behema, where there's no halach of error. If, let's say, someone went and separated the breads of the Taida, and he made a mistake, he thought he didn't separate breads yet, and he went and he took another 40 breads, and he says, okay, these should be my lachmei Taida, they're not sanctified, because he made a mistake, and the Mishnah teaches in Mesechtas Nazir of Laman Alf Manalf, hektish tois and a hektish. So over there, if you make a mistake, it's nothing. So you don't have the element of saying, oh, it's going to work by tois. And also, there's no such halacha of working when it's one after the other. If, let's say he separated 40 breads for his carbon taida, and he went and he shechted the carbon taida on it, and then when he separated another 40 breads, they're not going to be sanctified. So it doesn't have bezechazet, and it doesn't have betois. Yet, we learned the following machlokes. Let's say someone's bringing his carbon taida, his Thanksgiving offering, was let out of jail, he came from overseas, whatever, from those who have to bring the carbon taida, and he's supposed to bring 40 breads. Instead, he brings it with 80 breads. What's the halacha? So Chizkiah, the question is from Chizkiah. Chizkiah says, Kitchu Allah memetech shmayim. He says, okay, 40 out of the 80 breads will be sanctified. He says, no, like Kitchu Allah memetech shmayim. No, 40 out of the 80 is not going to be sanctified. But one thing is, how does Chizkiah say that 40 out of the 80 are going to work? That's what we call bevas achas. When you're doing it at the same time, you say, oh, what is going to work is going to work. What do you mean? But it doesn't work b'zachazeh. Didn't Rabbi say a principle that it has to be, if it doesn't work one after the other, then it doesn't work at the same time? Isn't that the principle he said regarding shvisa? Just like you can't pick your mokum shvisa over there and then subsequently pick another one. You can't have two places, and therefore it doesn't work at the same time either. So how does it work over here in the halacha of Chizkiah? Says Gemara, we learned, no, you're making a mistake. That's not really the halacha of Chizkiah. Amr B'Zer, he said, everyone agrees. Where the person says, I want 40 out of the 80 to be sanctified, where he said, I want 40, everyone agrees to Kach. Everyone agrees that's going to be sanctified. And so too regarding Shvisa. If someone would say that I want 4 out of the 8 to be acquired, so it'd be acquired because he picked 4 out of the 8 amas. Let's say he says, let's say I don't want 40 to be sanctified unless all 80 breads can be sanctified. Everyone agree that's not going to be sanctified because you can't have 80 breads. The halach is 40. The whole machlokes was bistama, when he didn't specify what he meant when he says, I'm bringing the 80 breads. His intention was for insurance purposes. If some breads get lost or become tamei, let's say half of them, so then the other half will be there to work for me. It's like as if he said, that 40 out of the 80 should be working. So yeah, 40 out of the 80, we said, if you pick 4 out of the 8 amas of shvisa, you pick 40 out of the 80 breads of the chalas, of course that's going to work. Because Valtanai, I see, he's bringing it on condition. Okay, that's going to work. However, it's getimtam at bays, but a marsa, Rabbi Yechon held, no, the carbon gadol kamachal. His intention is to bring a big carbon. That's not possible. And he didn't say he wants 40 out of the 80 to become sanctified. Therefore, it's not going to work. But again, regarding the shvisa, even according to Chizkiah, when he says, I want my shvisa to be tachtov, what type of achrayis are you doing over there? There, most definitely, his intention was for the whole area beneath the tree. The problem is the shvisa could only be daled amas, and he didn't say which daled amas is going to be, and therefore it's not going to work. So therefore it's not a difficulty on this principle of Rabbah, who he said that if it's not b'zachazeh, but v'asachazeinoi, we asked for meiser, and we asked for meiser behemo, we asked for chalas toid. Then we did not reject his principle, because again, by meiser, we said it's exactly, because each half of the kernel is going to be that fifth. So by meiser behemo, it actually could be b'zachazeh, because in the case of toys. And so regarding the lachmei toid, you're misunderstanding the case. It's not like really 40 out of 80 that's going to work. If you said 40 out of 80, for sure it would work. And if you just say you want all 80, for sure it's not going to work. And the question is, what does it mean? Is it carbon and therefore it's not going to work? Or was intentional for insurance, and he only wants 40, and therefore it's going to work. And now the Gemara goes back to the halacha from the previous daf. Omar Bai, he says, we didn't learn this halacha of Rav. Of lawyer Maklum, we had this halacha of the Mishnah. Let's say someone says he's 4,000 amos away from his house. He recognizes that tree. He knows is within 2,000 amos of his house. He says, I want shvisas to be tachta. The problem is the tree is 30 amos wide beneath the branches. You don't know where exactly he meant. So Rav says, lawyer Maklum, he hasn't said anything. He can't leave his spot of dalad amos because he didn't want to be shvis over there. He didn't want over there because he didn't say which dalad amos. Doesn't get anything. So now we have two different opinions regarding the qualification of Rav's case. Says Abai, we didn't learn that you didn't say anything. Only if we're talking about a tree that's at least 12 amos wide or bigger. Because then you could say that the 4 amos of one side or the other side of the middle, you don't know which dalad amos, so therefore it's not specific, and you don't know where it is. So therefore it's not going to get any shvisa. But if let's say you have a tree that doesn't have 12 amos, says Abaya, some of his residence is recognizable. In other words, as Rashi explains, you could select a measurement within these 11 amos that for sure in there will be some of his shvisa. Which is that? The 4 middle amos. If that was the exact dalad amos that he had in mind, so then, okay, that's the spot. And even if it was on the right side or the left side, a half a amma from each one is overlapping the middle one. So there is a definitive spot that for sure is going to be his makom shvisa. Now, of course, as Rashi points out, if he's going to go and try to get to his house this way or to where his feet are here, you'll have to do a chamar gama. We don't know exactly which one it is. But for sure there's a spot here that you can be, that's dalad amos, that's going to be somewhere in those 11 amos. 4 times 3, I used to teach math, and I said you're going to have to know when you get to Gemaras, right? Very simple math, but it's within the 11 amos, right? You're going to have an overlap of a half am on each side, but you're going to have the amos, and therefore it is considered Messiah money. It's definitive a spot. However, he doesn't like Abaya, his interpretation. He says, from where do you know that it's the middle dalad amos that's defined? In other words, as Rashi explains, who separated for you the middle dalad amos from the rest? And where are you coming from? If some of the house is recognizable in the middle ones, but you could say, Dilma bar boy the high gisa bar boy the high gisa kamasayim. Maybe that's not his dalad amos. And you don't know the spot. Since you could be in doubt, maybe it's the right side or the left side, and they're not absorbed in the other one, so it's not definitive. You don't have, you're saying if this is his spot, then it's going to overlap. But maybe this is his spot, maybe this is his spot on the right side. So since we don't know exactly which is his spot, it's not going to work. El Amar Avun Brit Bishua, he gives a different interpretation. He says, we didn't learn Rav's halacha, el be'ilan shetachtav ches amos. Only if the tree is at least 8 amos, where then you could say that it's either one side or the other side, and it's not definitive. But as in this picture, but if you have a tree that's only 7 amos, then Hari mixes basic nikah. Then for sure some of his residence is recognizable. In other words, then no matter where your dalad amos are, you're for sure going to have something of an overlap. It's not possible to select a dalad amos that you're not going to have on either side or the middle or wherever it is, that you're not going to have a spot. And again, if you're going to be measured, you still have to do a chamar gamel. You're going to have to, from here, if you're going to the left, from the left side, if you're going to the right. But his ruling was only if it's 8 amos or more. If it's 7 amos, then for sure under the tree, your dalad amos is going to be either the middle dalad somewhere. No, there's no spot that you're not going to have overlapping, and that's where Rav said his halach. Now the Gemara says, going back to the machlekes Rav and Shmuel, Tanika say the Rav, Tanika say the Shmuel. We have a Bryce that says like Rav and one like Shmuel. If you remember, when we said that shvisasi tachtav, Shmuel says, when it says in the Mishnah, Lema Klum, doesn't mean Lema Klum, you can't go anywhere. It just means Lema Klum to get to your house. But you just don't know exactly where, so you'll be a Chamar Gam. According to Rav, he says, Lema Klum, you haven't said anything. No, you can't move from your spot because you don't have any shvisa whatsoever. So this takes us to the end of the daf. 2 brises, one saying like Rav, one saying like Shmuel. It says the Gemara, Tanika say the Rav. We have a brise that says like Rav, that again, when you said Lema Klum, it means you don't get any shvisa at all. The brise says like this. And again, in Talmudic style, we're going to say a whole brisa. But there's one point that proves it like Rav. Says the Bryce, someone's going on the road and it's getting dark. And he recognizes a tree or a wall which he knows is within 2,000 amos, and he knows that that's also within 2,000 amos of his house. He says, you know what, let my shvisa be there, beneath that tree because it's starting Shabbos in like 30 seconds. Says the Brisa Lemon, he hasn't said anything. That's like the halacha of the Mishnah. Now the Brisa elaborates. Let's say he says, let my shvisa be in a certain place, as is going to be explained. That place is surrounded with walls. And therefore, that whole area is like Daled Amas. So therefore, he doesn't have to specify what the Daled Amas are, because the whole area is like Daled Amas. And therefore, he could go that whole area and beyond 2,000 Amas. It's all like Daled Amas because it's like a house. Any area that's surrounded with walls, the whole thing is like Daled Amas. So then, he can go till he gets to that place. When he gets to that place, Mahalachas Kuloi, so he can walk in that whole area. It's all like 1 Daled Amas. And Bechutala Alpayim Amma, then he can walk beyond that another 2,000 Amas because that's where his shvisa was. Says the Brisa, but when did we say this, that he could go the whole area? And besides that 2,000 Amas beyond it, that's only b'makam hamasuyim, as we just said, we'll explain, and that's what the Brisa is saying, but Medvamurim, is by a defined place, which is distinct from the rest of the open area, because this place has walls, has mechitzas. Now, as Rashi points out, this place is from within the area of 4 Amas to a base sign, because if it's less than 4 Amas, what does it mean Mahalachas Kula? Even without walls, your area of Shvis requires 3 Daled Amas. And it's more than base sign, since it wasn't hook of Ladira, it wasn't walled in for residential purposes, then the walls wouldn't help you to make it like Daled Amas when it's more than base sign, because that's already considered as a carbonist. But so when do we say this? When it's a distinct area, Kugai, and the Brisa gives some examples. Sheshavas Betel, if let's say the Makom Shvisa was in a mound, Shu Gabay Yud Tvachim, which is 10 Tvachim high, but Midal Amas by Beis Hasayim, and it's from an area of Daled Amas until Beis Hasayim. So again, that's a muk of mechitzis. The whole area is considered like Daled Amas. Oh, B'chein Bika, She'am Muku Yoro. Let's say you have a valley which is 10 Tvachim deep, which is also like walls. The walls up around that valley are also like walls. And that's again from an area of Daled Amas till Beis Hasayim. That would be considered the whole area like Daled Amas. Now, says the Brisa of Mokum Shem Mesuyim, but let's say it's not a distinct area. In other words, if it's not one domain of Daled Amas, either because there's no walls or because it's more than Beis Hasayim, then says the Brisa, Ein Loi, so then he doesn't have inside that area Ela Daled Amas, only 4 Amas besides the 2,000 Amas that he has beyond that. And the reason is because he has to specify which Daled Amas is going to be, as the Brisa is going to explain. When he defines which one it is, then he's going to acquire, and then he can go from the 2,000 Amas. But again, within the walls are also going to be counted from the 2,000 Amas, because the whole area is not like Daled Amas. But in that area itself, you would have to define what Daled Amas, but it's not all like 1 Daled Amas because it's bigger than, let's say, Beis Hasayim. Then it's not considered as it's really like a karmel. So you could only be up until a Beis Hasayim. Now, says the Brisa, let's say there was 2 people, and this is parenthetically a related halacha. Let's say these 2 people are going, one guy recognizes that tree or that wall, another one doesn't. So the one who doesn't recognize, he gives over his, so to speak, ability to create a residence to the guy who does recognize. The one who recognizes says, complaining, my shvisa should be in that place, and then that guy could take back on him and have a shvisa like that. Now here's the punchline that's going to say like Rav. When do we say this? That when it's an undefined place, meaning to say, like we said, if it's more than Beis Hasayim, so we're not going to consider the whole area like Daled Amas, but you will acquire at least Daled Amas for your shvisa, and then from that point onward, even if let's say within the walls, 2,000 Amas in every direction, that's Kishasayim Daled Amas Shekava. That's only if you define the Daled Amas that you're making as your Shabbos residence permanent. But if you did not define your Daled Amas, what's the halacha? These are the words of the Brisa that says like Rav, you cannot leave from your place. Wait a second. According to Shmuel, it's not the case. According to Shmuel, we don't know which Daled Amas would be a Chamar Gamel. So in this whole area of this larger than Beis Hasayim area, you didn't define, so we're not going to give it all as Daled Amas, but according to Shmuel, okay, it'll be part of this gray area, but you'll get in the worst, you'll have the lower hand, but you'll have somewhere here. You see like Rav, the Layazim Mekayim, you can't leave your place. That tells us like Rav. Says the Gemara, limit after you did the Shmuel. Oh, okay, let's say there's a refutation of Shmuel. It's not just supporting Rav, it's actually rejecting Shmuel. That says the Gemara, no. Because Amlach Shmuel would tell you, Hachamay he says, what's the case of the Brisa talking about over here? That, again, the Brisa told us that, as Rashi points out, the way Rav was saying that Nesayim Daled Amas was, He had a sign by a tree or the stone which Dalet Amos wanted to be. And we said besides that, you wouldn't be able to move from your place, which is like Rav. Shmuel says no. The case over here, Layaz's, is a specific case. There is from where the guy is standing up until the root of the tree, there's exactly 2,004 amas. Why? 2,000 amas is the tchum, but you also get for your shvisa, your mokum shvisa gives you also dalet amas. All of that ends exactly by the trunk of the tree. The problem is, the other half of the tree under those branches are outside of the 2,004 amas. And if it's going to be under the other half of the tree, that's going to be out of the tchum. So if you're going to give his shvisa beneath the tree on the other side, further away from where the guy is standing, comes out where he's standing right now, when it's getting dark, when it's getting Shabbos, is out of his tchum, because he's more than 2,004 amas away. So therefore, that's what the Bryce was saying. If you define which is your dalet amas, meaning the side of the tree that's closer to you, then you could go. But if you didn't define, then you could say that maybe it was on the other side of the tree that was his dalet amas, and now he's out of his tchum, and therefore, yes, he would only have dalet amas and lematziazal. He wouldn't be able to go. He would be stuck in this pot. Lo yazaz min kaimer. When did Shmuel say his halacha that you can acquire beneath the tree, even though you didn't define which one and that you could go, is where all of the tree beneath are all within the 2,004 amas. Where any dalet amas you're going to give him, where he would be able to get to from his feet. So therefore he acquires a shvis over there, but we just don't know which one it is, in the northern side or the southern side. So he gets Yad al Tartan, he gets the lower hand. And again, when you're coming to measure from the northern side of the tree you can, to where he's standing, you're going to have to go from the south. And you're going to have to minimize the distance, whatever the area of the tree takes up. And same thing goes to his house or goes to where his feet are, you're going to have to lose out. But you'll get it because it's within, it overlaps, you just don't know which one. Here, no, it actually ends over here. And therefore, because maybe it's under the tree, and that's why it's not difficult on Shmuel. Then says the Gemara, Tani Kava say the Shmuel. Rabbi Bryce says like Shmuel, it says no. It's not like when you don't know where, you don't get any shvisa. It's just, he says like in the klum, you couldn't go to your house. But you could go to the tree. Why? Because the Bryce says like this. Let's say someone made a mistake. And he went and he made an Erev to two different directions. He made an Erev to the south and he made it to the north. He thought that you're allowed to do that. He thought I could go in the morning one direction and in the evening the other direction. Now, since his intention was to have both of them to be as an Erev, so one of them is acquiring for him, but he doesn't know which one. So therefore we give him the stringency of both of them, which is, or let's say, let's say he told his servants, he goes, I need to get out of town for Shabbos. I don't know, I need to walk very far away. I don't care, just make me an Erev somewhere. So the problem is, one servant made it to the north, one made it to the south. So what's Allah? Again, it's similar to like the previous case. When he's going to the north, he can go like his Erev of the south was. And when he's going to the south, he can only go as far as Erev was for the north. In other words, when he's going from his house to the north, he has to go like the measurement of the tchum that his servant made for him to the south. That's how far he can go to the north. And so when he wants to go to the south of his house, he can only go like the tchum was, that the Erev was, for the north. That's how far you go to the south. So for example, let's say the guy only wanted to go 3,000 amas on either direction from his house. So he went and he placed, or his servants placed, at the end of 1,000 amas away from his tchum. Because again, every person could go 2,000 amas away from his house. Now, he didn't want to go 4,000 amas, he wanted to go 3,000 amas. So now he went and he did the Erev 1,000 further. So now, from wherever your Erev is, that's where your Shabbos residence is. Now you get 2,000 amas in every single direction. Now the thing is that, so let's say this is his house. So he put 1,000 amas away, shleivim 1, shleivim 2. So from here you get 2,000 amas in every direction. So you can go 2,000 amas this way, and you go 2,000 amas this way. So now you can only go, here's 1,000 amas, and you go 1,000 amas, you can go till here, but you can't go any step further. Here you can go this way, wherever we're being machmer in both directions, wherever you go. So we're going to give you. But it's essentially, this is exactly like Shmuel's halacha, which is the chamar gam. And the mitzvah besatchum. Let's say actually what happened was, let's say they split the tchum, which means to say every servant went and did it 2,000 amas away. from where his city was. Now, his house exactly in between those two tchumen, you have a full tchum to the west and a full tchum to the east, because each one did it 2,000 amas away, which then you can get to that Eruv, then lo yosem mikamer, then he can't leave from his house. He's not even like the people of his city, because he didn't intend to acquire Shvisa over here. He intended to acquire Shvisa where the Eruv is, and we don't know which one acquired. This one did it to the south, now you lose 2,000 amas to the north. This one did it to the north, you lose 2,000 amas to the south. So therefore, that guy would be stuck in his spot. Okay, but the main thing that we bring from this price is that we learn that you could go to the north according to the Eruv of the south. So we see that when you're in doubt which one it is that he preferred, we go like both of them stringently, but what is left over is going to be permitted to go, even though he didn't define exactly which one it is. That's like Shmuel that he says that we're in doubt which Daled Amos it is that you're acquiring beneath the tree. So we're going to give you the stringency of both, but we're going to let you at least go in that gray area that you have to have on Shabbos. That's not like Rav. Rav says if you don't know which one it is, you don't get a shvis at all. Says the Gemara, to the Rav. So let's say there's a refutation of Rav, because he says when you don't define, you can't leave your spot. You didn't want to acquire shvis where you're standing. And beneath the tree, since we don't know exactly, we could say it's here, we could say it's here, you don't acquire neither one. What do you mean? Over here we say that even though you could say it's to this one or to this one, okay, we don't know which one it is, but you do acquire one of them, and we don't know which one, so we have to go stringently like either one. What do you mean? According to Rav, this halacha should be that you should lay Yazim Kaimai, because you didn't want to acquire in your house, and you didn't define which Erev it is. So you should have only Dalam, you should have lay Yazim Kaimai. Why is the Brisa say that you get the stringency of both? Sounds like Shmuel.
Why is the first Erev good and then the second one is condemnation?
Which, what did you say?
The first Shliach.
Yeah.
That should be the Erev.
Oh, who's the first one?
The second one is like the first.
This question is you don't know. It could be you don't know which one it is, right?
Maybe the second one is Mavatal the first.
Right. Each one has a shlichus, right? Or he himself thought that he could do it.
I didn't come back to tell you.
Right. So the Gemara says Rav Tanhu Polik. So you're right. This definitely refutes Rav, because you see that you're going to give him a chamer gamal halach. According to Rav, you shouldn't have any shvisa. Rav's a Tana and he disagrees. Some of these we discussed in today's Daf and Eruvin Daf Nun. Was we said, what's the reason of Rav? Which Rav says that when it says in the Mishnah Ein Loi Klum, it means you don't get anything. What? So the Gemara says, because Shmuel makes sense. He said you don't know which one, but okay, just go Chamer Gamo, just say out of doubt, we'll give you the stringency of both. So either Rabbi says in the first version because Loi Mesai Maaseh, he didn't define where, so he can't give you a Shvisa. Or the halachic concept, what's called Kosher in Bezech Hazeh, whatever cannot be subsequently, so then even Bevas Achas is not going to work. What's the difference between the two of them is where he says, I want to be Daled Amos from 8. So you didn't define, so it wouldn't work according to the first interpretation, but it's not really Kizach Hazeh, because you don't want one after the other, you want only one, you said you only want one, so then according to that interpretation would work. Then the Gemara asks on that second interpretation 3 questions. First one is from a Brisa that someone's marba b'maisus. He gives, let's say, 1/5 instead of 1/10. So we say that the chulin is going to be fixed, and then the Gemara says, why is the chulin fixed? What do you mean? It wouldn't work b'zeh hazeh. If you give it ma'aser and you give another ma'aser, that wouldn't work. So why is it working b'vas achas? Why is it working to be as a valid ma'aser? I think Gemara says, yeah, because you could do lechatzai. You could go ahead and say every single kernel I'm giving him is halfway sanctified as ma'aser. So you really are giving something that is a bona fide ma'aser at this point. It's not really 1/5, it's really 1/10, because every half you're giving him is half sanctified. Then we said, what's with ma'aser behema, where you don't have the halacha over there of lachatzayin, you can't say the half the animal sanctified. Why over there do we have halacha that when you call out both as number 10, they're gonna, one of them is going to be considered as ma'aser? Why? You can't do b'zeh hazeh, so why b'vas achas? Yeah, there actually is a b'zeh hazeh that does work by ma'aser behema in the case of the toys. When you make the mistake, we said you call it 10, number 9, 9, 10, 11, number 10, you will, the Gemara B'charis learns out from Sukkim, it will have halacha of sanctity, and therefore, since it does have halacha b'zeh hazeh, so therefore it will work b'vas achas. The third case was with the lachmei taidam, the breads of the carbon taidam, where you say you want 40, you say 80 are going to be the breads, where again, there's no halacha of toys. If you take 40, then you take another 40, those 40 are not going to be sanctified. You also don't have b'zeh hazeh, where to do it one after another, there's no such halacha of saying, oh, I want to do another 40, it doesn't work. So why is the halacha that Chizkiah holds that 40 out of the 80 are going to be sanctified? Why is it sanctified? It shouldn't work b'vas achas, just like it doesn't work b'b'zeh hazeh. So the Gemara explains, no, you're understanding the whole halacha wrong. If you say 40 out of 80, for sure it's going to work. If you say you want all 80, for sure it's not going to work. Machlekes Chizkiya and Rabbi Yochanan was when he just says unspecified. Chizkiya understands that the extra 40 are lachrayas, and he's only bringing al t'nai, and therefore, of course, it's going to work because he's really only bringing 40. It's not like he's intending to bring 80. Rabbi Yochanan, who holds it's not going to be valid, because he holds no, the carbon gadol mechaven, and yeah, you can't bring 80, and therefore it's not going to work. Then Abaye qualified the halacha of Rav, that he says that you're not getting any tchum at all. When you say you want your shvisase top of the tree, is when the tree is at least 12 amas. If it's less than that, then some of your bias is going to be recognizable, because if you pick the middle dollar amas of 11 amas, it's going to for sure include some of your shvisa. Which the Gemara asked on the bias interpretation, yeah, but who said it's the middle 4? That's the one. Maybe it's the other ones, and therefore it's not defined. Even though it will be overlapped, it's not defined. So that's why he says, no, we're talking about a tree that's 8 amas. But if it's less than 7, that's where you're going to say no, that no matter where it is, if it's this dollar amas or this dollar amas, it's going to be overlapping. It's for sure, no matter what dollar amas you pick. And then even Rav would agree that you can have a shvis over there. But again, you'll be chamer gamol. You just, when you're counting from either direction going the other way, you'll have to count from the opposite end of the tree. Then we had 2 brises, one that said like Rav and one that said like Shmuel. The brisa said that if you didn't define your dollar amas, that you needed in that mokum she'ena mesuyim, which was, let's say, Mukim Mechitza, but it was bigger than Beis Hasayim, the halacha of the Brisa says, well, Lo Yozim Mekayim, which is exactly like Rav. Rav says that you don't get Chamer Gamel, you didn't define, you can't move. What's with Shmuel? Shmuel says, no, that case that Brisa is talking about, from his feet until the trunk, is 2004 amas. The other side of the tree, you wouldn't be able to go, because it's too far. So if you didn't say where, it's not just like a Chamer Gamel, you wouldn't have anything, because that might be the other side of the tree, other side of that place. And that's beyond your tchum. If your Eruv is beyond your tchum and you're not taking over here, you can't move from your spot because you don't have an accessible makom shvisa. That's the case that the Bryce is talking about. And then we had a Bryce that said like Shmuel, which is someone made a mistake and he made an Eruv to 2 different directions. So the Bryce says it's chamer gamel. He says that okay, we can even distinguish either one. If you made 1,000 amas this way, 1,000 amas this way, so he's going to have, he'll only be able to go. He's going to lose from either side. But you could go. You weren't deciding. You didn't say which one it is. That's not like Rav. So he's like, well, yeah, Rav is Tana Mubarak. Rav is like a Tana, and we can disagree. And sometimes the Gemara says that, even though it's like in the Gemara, thank you to any time for hosting us.